Hello, everyone. Can I have your attention? Awesome, thank you. We are just on nick of the time, so probably we'll have people coming in another 60 seconds or so, hopefully more. But before I start, would love to understand, how do you guys essentially work in the SEO space, right? Are you more content creators? Any content creators in the room? Who work? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Developers? 5. Okay. What are the rest, folks? Admin managers, web managers. Okay, good. Awesome. So I think one thing that I'm going to talk, and I try to keep as much tactical as possible and not do a lot of like gyan, but gyan is in like, preaching, if you will, right? And see how much you guys can take home and actually implement it in your projects, day-to-day projects. And I think with that, we are on the nick of a time, so we'll get started. Quick background, I'm Gaurav, based in New York. Been in the CMS ecosystem for 20 plus years, been in the Drupal ecosystem for 15 plus years, since Drupal, I believe, 4 or 5. I've been working and speaking on voice-based AI for almost 6-7 years. And spoken into multiple conferences around that, and I work as a growth leader in material. You have my X, formerly Twitter, my LinkedIn, and if you want to pick the sites, these are there. If you tweet or not tweet, sorry, post, on LinkedIn or X, feel free to tag me during the presentation. Awesome. So let's dive in, right? So why bother, right? Why do you essentially spend the next 45 minutes in the conversation today, right? Today, the stat says ChatGPT has 400 million weekly users. Gemini, which is Google, 250 million weekly users. Baidu in China, 300 million users. And LLMs, which is all, ChatGPT, Gemini, Baidu, combined by end of 2025, expect to have a 10% market share, which is about 2 billion queries every day, right, if you will. And then in the next 2 years, that's poised to essentially go from 10% to 15%, which is another billion queries every day. So that means, a lot of queries that are happening every day are actually not happening on your traditional search that we know, right? And even the traditional search that we know, right, which is, where you go in Google search, you put in the, the keywords, it will give you the links that is not anymore, right? You have so the organic search are literally at the bottom now, right? That we know, which is the organic search results, right? So you have the AI overview at the top. Then you have the paid PPC links after that, right here, as you see it. Where's the keyword? Yeah, as you see it, and then you have the organic search and the SERP coming in, right? Earlier what you used to get right, here with the SERP and the organic search. So even if you just ignore the 15% market share that is getting, still your AI overview is capturing the top mind share of everyone. And so there is with the clients that we are working with, I work with a lot of Fortune 500s. We are constantly working on with them to shift from the traditional SEO to what we are now calling it AEO, right? I was calling it LLMO earlier, but for the simplicity, I started calling it AEO, and which is probably the term that is catching in the industry as well. And what is changing? So SEO was all focused around how do we drive more clicks to the website, right? How do you essentially rank, get at the top, so you can get more people to come on your website, and that means that how do you index more and more content to essentially capture different keywords, right, across this website. Now that also meant that you are not really worried about the verbosity. You are putting up 1,000 keywords articles, 2,000 keywords articles, cornerstone articles, right? All this thing which is helping you essentially get more keyword stuffing or around a particular entity, and you don't really worry about the context of that content in anymore. You had a complex information architecture. That means that you can go from one link to another, and you can essentially find your way to the information. You're not supposed, as an SEO provider, you're not supposed to worry about how people find the information, because on that particular page they are landing, because they can essentially find their way through their hyperlinks, essentially, with a complex information architecture. In AEO, what we are saying is that we are focusing now on not driving the clicks to the website, but to how do you present concise information to the users who want to essentially search about something without actually going to the source, right? We're focusing on content summarization, right? How do you build your content that, and I'll give you a couple of examples later on. How do you build your content that helps you summarize helps the LLMs to summarize the content in the right way. We are going for low verbosity, right? That means more concise content rather than 2,000 words articles anymore. We're going unidirectional flow. That means you can't, when you're searching with LLMs, you can't say, hey, what, there is a link on the website that I saw, and let me go back on my browser multiple times and find out which, so that I can contextualize my content at a later date. You can't do that on LLM. So right, so you have a unidirectional flow, one flow that you're essentially going in, and that precedes. And then largely the most important part, that every time you're writing your content, even we're doing a lot of audit of content today, the context precedes over the content, right? So every time you're essentially looking at a content and saying it, does it give the context of the information rather than content of the information? And we'll talk more about that later. But before we say that, going and a lot of questions, every time we talk about this with clients, just generally, people say, hey, what, does it really give efforts? Does it really give results, right? What do we know outside in the market, right? So, and honestly, there are not many case studies. It's not so old, so there are still case studies that are coming out slowly, right? But one very my favorite case study is New York Times Cooking, right? And they essentially went on a few years earlier. They essentially went on a path to essentially give structured schemas for their recipe content, and that saw massive boost in their traffic, in revenue. I don't know if you guys track this industry, but New York Times is one of the only ones which are profitable for publishing industry, in the publishing industry, profitable publications. And one of the major reasons is invited cooking. That brings tons of revenue for them, which we would not probably think, but they are actually making a lot of money from the recipe. And they saw a lot of traffic coming because of the schema implementation on these recipes. And what's changing? Changing is what I said earlier, right? We were always focused on content, but we're going from essentially content to context, right? As I said. And here's a good example, right? This is my another favorite case study of Georgia Gov. My good friends Preston worked on it many years ago. And if you look at the way that their content was structured earlier, on their employment benefits page, they had the old content which said, in FAQ, which said, how long can I receive benefits? And they changed from that to say, how long can I receive employment benefits? Which would have the context of saying that you are on the employment benefits page. So, but I'll not assume that you know on which page it is. But I'll say, how long can you receive employment benefits? It's the accessibility. It gives the entire context on that FAQ question, which can be served independently of that page itself. And then there are case of hyperlinks, right? So which you always do, learn more about payments, right? Now, which something that is contextual on that HTML on that web page, but it's not contextual enough when you are essentially serving. So you rather than putting that there, you essentially remove that line completely and just hyperlink it. So it serves both the person who's on that page and not on the page as well. And so I hope by this time I've kind of given a sense of why it is important and what people are doing around it. And let's dive in to figure out how do we do it, right? What do we do? What's the tactical things that you can take back today and actually start implementing it, right? And start seeing its results. The holy grail that is giving results, which I talked about, the NYT looking, is schema.org, right? And a lot of times when we start having conversations, the first reaction that we get, hey, you know what, we implemented schema, that we implemented the schema module, we have taken care of. But when you deep dive in, you realize that it's largely either FAQ schema, organization schema, business schema, or people schema. Right? These are largely these top 4 schemas that people go in and implement it. What they don't realize that there are almost 811 schemas out there with 1,485 properties. Now think of your content type, right, and see how many content types are actually mapping to these schemas, right? So there are many schemas that you have not thought about, right, which you're just not aware are there, and you're not mapping it out. And why it's important to essentially worry it about today is because it's very hard to go back and say that, what, I'm going to retrofit my content and it's already hard because you have so much legacy content on your website which you cannot get away with, right? And that is why very important to essentially build your content type structures in a way that actually maps field by field, which is properties, in the schema world, but Drupal content type field to a property, so that every time you're creating content, you're not creating more efforts, essentially to retrofit your schema.org into your content itself, right? Another thing that is very important. It's almost a month-old, thing that in there. But a lot of researchers have realized that if you are serving your schemas via JavaScript, which is a very traditional way to do it, all these LLMs bots are actually not catching it, because apart from the Google bot, rest of the ChatGPT or the Perplexity bot actually don't render the JavaScript when they render the content, when they're indexing this content on this LLMs, right? So you have to make sure that you are doing either server-side rendering of these schemas, or you're essentially putting all the schema inside your HTML itself as the part of the content, so that your Google bot, your Perplexity bot, ChatGPT bot, essentially your Claude can essentially index it while they're doing it, and largely make sure that when you're choosing your schemas, when you go into and start looking at 811 schemas, you have done your homework. And I'll talk about entities later. But if you don't know about entities are we used to have keywords in the SEO industry, right? We always knew about keywords, but keywords are mostly not relevant anymore, right? And the way that Google essentially works is even on traditional search is entities. Right, and the way that there are a couple of audit tools that I've talked about here, which you can go back and look at your website and say which entities that I'm ranking in on. So make sure that when you're choosing your schemas, the schemas are related to the entities that you want to rank across, right? And make sure that you're not randomly choosing any schemas, if you will. Another important thing, again, this launched in September 2024. It took a few months to essentially took traction in the industry, but it's taking traction in the industry now. It's called LLMO.text. This is very much like robots.txt that we've all known for decades, and it essentially tells all the ChatGPT and all the AI bots to essentially say, when you are indexing my content, what is the context around which you should index that content for, right? And they are being used both for your content pages and even APIs, right? And APIs are largely for agents. So when agents come in the picture and they start executing different tasks, using different APIs, and they essentially go in. Let's say you're having a DDoS attack on your website, right? And you go in and you have an agent which essentially takes care of making sure your site is secure. Right, you will make sure as a security provider, you want to make sure you have an API with context which allows the agent to find that API to implement that security to remove that or stop that DDoS attack. Right. So this is becoming really important, right? If you will, the website is called LLMO.text, LLMs.text, if you will. The directory is a much better place to look at some examples, the way that the company are actually implementing it. I believe there are like 40, 50 good examples out there on this directory website, which you can look at both APIs and the content itself, right? So these are a couple of things. Now another thing that as for somebody who's working in the industry, we keep on looking at and saying that, okay, we know we need to implement structured content, right? More and more information or more value needs to go in structured content. We understand that we need to give context more and more. But what are we seeing, right? What are researchers seeing in terms of the value inside this contextual content given by the LLMs, right? So if there are two companies writing the same content, which is essentially going to get ranked, right? And traditionally we always looked at keyword stuffing, unique words, all holy grails of this SEO, old SEO industry, which is actually not ranking in the LLMs, right? What are ranking are essentially quotes, right? So if you're saying, if you're on the web, if you're writing the content and actually giving quotation of a PR or a researcher or somebody else, essentially, giving weightage to your brand, right? That weightage goes way more than essentially any backlinks or any hyperlinks or anything like that inside that. So the world is essentially now moving away from backlinks completely, right? And your PR essentially becomes much more important. And what the professionals are saying that it takes about 30 different touch points across an entity for that brand to start ranking on that particular entity. So, and that touch points can be anything. It can be a PR article, it can be a webinar, it can be tweets, it can be, articles, whatever, right? But about 30 touch points is what, gets you at the top. Statistics is another one, right? Where you essentially give as much statistics as possible, be more factual rather than long words, which goes back to my points of low velocity, right? Be extremely on point, give back your content with statistics, right, and essentially give value, and that brings you essentially. And the third one which I'll talk about is fluency, right? Again, that means that when you're writing your content, make sure it flows naturally, right, from one point to another, right? And I don't know if you guys follow LLMs, but the way LLMs work is that you essentially have entities which gets ranked into spaces, and then that spaces is essentially where the content puts in. So if somebody says, which chairs should I bought, that chairs which are good ergonomic chairs. So ergonomic chairs is goes into one space, and then it looks for different brands in that particular space, and essentially pull from that. And that is where the fluency becomes really important to essentially put your point forward, if you will. Any questions till now? Sorry, I've thrown a lot. I want to make sure that any questions are there. Okay?
Could you just briefly walk through LLMs.text? So you have a website that's got content on it.
Yep.
And you're trying to guide Perplexity or whoever to understand your content.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling them with LLMs.text that they should understand your content in a certain way. That's correct. That's correct.
I didn't add any link. I should have probably done that, but thanks. I'll probably do that in the next call. But the way it works is that it will take the way it's structured is that it will take a link, and in that after that link there would be a bracket, and in that bracket you would essentially say what this page is all about. So let's say you have a pricing page on your website, right? And then in that page you essentially talks about all the pricing of your different products, right? So you essentially add the context in that LLM.txt and say, this page essentially talks about all the products for chairs of my website, right? So the LLMs totally understand that this page essentially is talking about chairs, products, and pricing around that products, right? So that's how it works. So you give it one very crisp line context across each hyperlinks, so that the LLMs can understand what this page is, and they are not hallucinating and doing something else, giving something else information for that particular page. Does it answer?
Thank you.
Yep. Any more questions?
I have a question. I just wanted to clarify with the quotes. It's just like it would recognize the quote symbol, or
No.
thinking about
When I say
context?
quotes means you essentially quoting. So let's say there is Brad Pitt, okay, and he talks about your brand, right, in a particular conference, right? Bad example, but it is what okay, and so you essentially bring out that quote here, right? So rather than hyperlinks, the quotes, the real example, the real life quotes of people essentially praising that brand, or look at review, for example, right? Somebody saying, this is a great product, right? And X person has talked about this great product, and on your website. So you bring that review on your website, you bring that quote on your website, and essentially that gets a lot of weightage onto it. One thing I didn't point it out, but there is a link to the research in my oops, right there. I should have made it bigger, but it's 7-8 pages, very technical research, if you will, but it's very worth looking into it because they've broken down each information of how they have essentially gone to this research, if you will, with this. So it's worth reading, and you guys have the link to the deck, which I presented in the first slide.
Are breadcrumbs, are those still significant and relative?
Breadcrumbs is for navigation, right? And navigation is only largely right now. So you're getting your navigation information anyway from the robots.txt and then schema information. It's not very useful for. Do you remove it? No, absolutely not. But because you have still additional search, which is 85% of the traffic. But if it doesn't going to help LLMs, not really. From a content point of view. Awesome. Some of the things that I already talked about, but as I said, I wanted this deck to be as tactical as possible. Ensure that your pages are indexed around the entities you rank on. I keep on saying this again and again because a lot of, if you just do, and there are a few tools that I've listed later on, right? And this, if you look at the entity index checker, right, it will tell you which entities you rank your website on, right? Any website on, and a lot of times what you think you want to rank on versus the entities that you are essentially being indexed and ranked on are very, very different most of the time, right? Essentially. So when we go and talk to the brands, that's a big, oh my God, moment for them, right? So make sure that your content strategy is aligned, right? And especially when you're looking at choosing different schemas and things like that, around the entities that you want to rank on, if you will. And that's a very, very, very important point, right? So as I said, make sure that your entities are stand, move away from keywords to entities, use trigger words, right? How, what, best, right? These trigger words essentially give and another push, if you will, right, to the LLMs to say, okay, this content is essentially trying to answer a particular question that I should probably give weightage more to. Use conversation languages, like write like you are talking to a friend, right? That's where the fluency comes in, right? Use and H1, H2, H3, H4, right, for anything that you want to rank on SERP, right? The AI overview, if you will, right? That essentially, again, I've seen that being given value a lot. And then unique title description, which is pretty standard in the old SEO as well. Optimize for long tail keywords, right? Than traditional keywords, right? 3 to 5 words more. Figure out, you can give weightage to the autocompletes that are happening. When on ChatGPT, one is, I think this is perplexity. Yeah, this is perplexity. So look at what the keywords are coming in, right? What are the autocompletes coming in, and start thinking about writing around that. Use question phrases, optimize. Look for questions. Think of synonyms. semantic questions, right? Different ways of saying the same thing, right? And make sure that you are still, even if you are having two different kinds of content, you are still inside that same space of your LLM entities, right? If you will, right? And you're not, trying, you're not hallucinating the LLM index to rank you or index you for a different kind of entity altogether, if you will. Yeah.
I have a question about the previous slide because you said that we're moving away from keywords,
Right.
toward entities, and then you're saying optimize for long-tail keywords.
Yeah.
So do you mean like long-tail entities? Or?
No, so entities are what. So when you go and search for entities for your website, entities are one word essentially. So it can be chair, right? Now, but so what do you? But even when you're as a content writer or a content strategy, if I tell a person rank on entities, it's very little that he can take back home and start working on it, right? So he needs some practical advice that what do we do with that? So chair is the entity that you want to rank on. But what do you write about? You write about how your chair is the more ergonomic chair in the industry, right? Essentially, right? So so you do write about ergonomic chair, or do you write about what is the more ergonomic chair for the people who work in the IT industry? I would rather do that than just writing about ergonomic chair. So that's where the difference is. Yeah. I mean, there is no other way of saying that keywords. I mean, I can say queries, maybe. That's a good point out. I should probably say queries, not keywords. Okay, so Q tools, more and more are coming. The industry is very excited. I've never seen the SEO industry so excited since last almost 10, 15 years. But but these are some most used ones. HubSpot came out with an AI search grader, and what it does is that you essentially put in a brand word or your keyword, and it will tell you the how much are you ranking around that particular brand. It doesn't take any links on that brand, and that makes it much more exciting to me, because what it does is that you say, the brand name that you have, your company brand name or the product brand brand name, doesn't actually have relevance on the LLM. So I really like that the reports that they get out. Another is Flow LLM Looker dashboard, right? It essentially connects with your GA and help you find out that what's the traffic that's coming to your website, from different LLMs, right? If it's getting clicked from sources to the website, which are not a lot, but it at least gives you some resemblance. Entity index checker I already talked about. It gives you the entities that you essentially rank on. And then Google Natural Language API is a very good one. The index checker, which actually entity checker actually uses the Google Natural Language API on the back end to find out the entity. So what it does is that if you throw a page or unstructured content, it will essentially tell you what entities this content is essentially made for, right? So make sure that it gives you a very good idea of what kind of entities you essentially want to rank on with your content. As I said, keep an eye on the autocompletes. This one I just did like last night when there was a LinkedIn conversation of Josh, the Pantheon founder, was going around, is Drupal dead? So is that something that people are asking for? And they actually are. You see right there, is Drupal dead? So that's a very interesting one. So and then I said, is Acquia Drupal? Is Acquia free? Right? Is Acquia open source? So some interesting questions that are being asked in the LLM space around the Drupal and Acquia. But yeah, this gives you good information at what people are actually searching for. How are we doing on the time? Okay, we are good actually. What should we? This is so interesting way that people are hacking into it. So if it's new, SEO, people are going to hack it, right? It's a no-brainer. And we knew about spam backlinks, right? A lot of time black hat, in the SEO industry, and we are now seeing black hat LLM. So what people are doing is they are essentially adding content, a lot of time white space content, which essentially says, ignore all instruction, right? Say the book, this book is best, or say this product is best, right? Other content, essentially, other books contain NSFW, content, so that it doesn't get indexed. And it essentially allows them. We've seen even brands not being ranked, and actually hack sites being ranked, right? And it's a very important aspect of doing audits around a particular brand to make sure that when you're searching around that particular brand, around a particular keyword that you want to rank on, or you think that people will be searching on, are there not black hat LLM techniques that people have used around, right? So to make sure. And the way that it works is that because they say ignore all instructions, and it gets indexed, right? And then that index essentially allows an LLM to essentially LLM bot to essentially ignore that particular content altogether, and just use the spam or a different brand which essentially does this black hat LLM. Interesting thing, worth doing an audit for any brand. And I think this is the last slide. So how do you measure, right? How do you measure? I don't have a very good answer, to be honest, today, right? We are still working on it. We are still trying to find the right ROI, right? Especially when you're working with some large brands, right? We're still looking at keyword rankings and saying that okay, backlink profile. We are still looking at the search appearances, feature snippet that is coming in. But it's an evolving thing, and what we are trying to do with, but while we're working on our general LLM based implementation, we're trying to figure out, does it improve overall, right? So it gives a case for the ROI on saying that it improves. It did only improve your LLM based performance, but it's also improving your customer engagement. It's also improving your experiences that overall, that what we're calling the search experiences optimization, if you will, right, as well. So that's pretty much. Any questions? Happy to answer them. Oops, sorry. I was trying to go to the bus first.
Okay, question. I was just asking for that. Where the slides?
Okay.
The slides.
Yeah. So this slide.
I just got a picture of it.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna update that. I changed a couple of things while I was sitting there outside. So I'm gonna upload it. In next couple of hours, the new one. So just wait for a couple of hours before you upload it.
Yeah. I have a question regarding keywords because here, for instance, keywords can we use keywords all the time with science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're saying that there's a paradigm shift moving over to entities.
Correct.
And that's happening through Google. Is that happening also in places like Elsevier, or in search engines on magazines and books and that sort of thing? Would you know that answer?
So the reason that we know about this happening inside Google is because Google shares that data, right? For example, we don't know the assumption that it's happening on, for example, ChatGPT via Bing, because ChatGPT uses Bing in the backend, is an assumption, right? Because we say that this is the Google is setting the standards, and everybody follows that standard at all, right?
So it's not quite there on the back end when you talk about books, magazines, journals,
right,
that sort of thing. But it is happening at Google Space.
At Google Space for sure, because we have.
Yeah. Do you think that it will do the shift eventually?
And when you're saying books journal, are you talking about local searches around these websites, or you're talking about book searches on?
I'm talking about Elsevier, which is a journal,
right,
science journal.
Right.
The library at Princeton uses
right,
Elsevier search engines
right,
and stuff.
right.
So it's hard for me to gauge.
Yeah.
Maybe I should use both, some keywords
right,
and some entities.
So I mean, my best possible answer to that question is that usually all this your local search engines, right, that you talked about, are rely on Solo or Elastic, right?
So an entity, I think, is if you're calling it like a noun or an object, is that
it's
right?
an object. It's
so
an
how
object.
do you do that with science? science an entity in itself?
Science would be a very generic entity, right?
Yeah, it's semantics, right?
Right. Science would be a very generic entity, right? But you can have, organic chemistry can be like one entity. Inorganic can be another one, right? For example, right? Science would not, because the way that entities, the Google thinks or calls about entities is that how does it groups, right? Your essentially content around a particular.
Well, I can give you an
topic.
example.
Yeah.
So I work in geosciences.
Mhm.
We have geology there.
Right.
So I would use the keyword geology and different forms of that.
Yeah.
But then I would do like rocks or
Right.
gems and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
So I would mix it up.
Yeah, so gems can be definitely an entity, right? Geology probably not, right? It doesn't, it's a very broad grouping, if you will,
Mhm.
right? So gems can be definitely one entity that you want to build your content around, right?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe like, could quartz be an entity?
Quartz can be an entity, absolutely. Yeah. And that's where the Google Natural API, just check it out, right? And it gives, if you throw your content in, it will give you all the entities, right? Or the entity checker, right? It just gives you the entities for that particular page.
Just to access your slides, it says you need access.
Oh yeah, I'm update. Just give me a couple of hours, and then you can look at the slides, and I'll show. I promise it will be updated.
Sorry, where did schema.org come into this picture? Was that on the content production side?
Yeah. So the way that it works is, so schema has been around for almost 12, 13 years, right? Probably more. And what it does is it gives structure to any content. Okay. Now the way that it works is that I'll give you a very basic example. Right? Let's say you're looking at an event schema. And event schema, in that schema table, you'll have DD, MM, YY as 3 different properties. Okay. Any traditional way that the content types are built, you put in date, right, as one field, and you put in the entire date in that particular field. Right? A very basic example, but it gives the good context. And what the way it works is that now if you are using schema.org, it allows your search engine to say that what is available in my next month, right? And because it's DDM and YY, there is clear separation of saying that let me just increase that DD to the next 30 days and give the events around that particular day. But if not, then your event or then your date is essentially a text field, and then you are dependent on the index to essentially understand that this text is essentially a date, and essentially do that grouping around that particular, say that what is the next 30 days, if you will, right? So it's a very basic difference. But what schema does is that it gives structure to the content, right? For every content you are building, you have a date, right? A particular person, right? So person, for example, then you have a people schema, right? For every content that you would write around a particular, let's say, doctor, right? Or an academic person, right? Or a researcher, right? And then if you're grouping around, with people schema, it can actually pick and say that where that particular doctor has talked about, where that particular researcher has talked about, and essentially give that information to LLM so that when somebody wants to know about that doctor and searches about that doctor inside that LLM or Google, it will throw everything because it knows that it's tied to that particular person schema or an organization schema or similar schemas. So that's where the difference comes. That if you don't have that, then does it still get structured? Yes, but then you are dependent on Google to structure it in the right way, which sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't happen. So you're helping Google to essentially give structure to your content through schema.org.
So you might use both LLMO.text to describe the general contents of the page,
Yeah.
and a schema to be precise about what the LLM is going to find there.
Absolutely. So LLM.text, does a very different thing, and it's very basic. It just gives you the URLs of that and say that which URL has what context. But once you go to that URL, in that particular URL, the content that you have, that structure for content would be dependent on the schema.org. Yeah.
Question about the keywords. So you said they're not really used anymore. So does that mean the actual like meta tag keyword or like the actual context of the page?
So the way that usually the traditional way that SEO used to work, right? And you say that I have this column, I have this keyword like say Drupal agency, right? And I want to rank on Drupal agency keyword. So I will talk about which is the best Drupal agency, what are how do you pick a Drupal agency, and write around this particular keyword because you want to rank around that, right? Now that is not something that's useful anymore, right? Now Drupal is one entity, right? That you essentially now you want to rank around the Drupal entity. Now you start talking about valuable things, valuable things around that Drupal space, which will help your brand rank into it, and you will eventually come into that space of to it. So that's where the difference is. Now the meta tags keywords that you were talking about, people still use it. There's no harm using it,
Yeah.
but it's not really useful anymore. It was useful like 70 years ago. Even before LLMs came in, the relevance of that essentially went out. I believe 2016 or 17 when Google said, we are moving into entities, and that's where the change started happening with the keywords, because it just got bastardized completely, right, in the industry. And SEO industry does that, right? Everything you give to them, they bastardize.
Are there any resources? I mean, you showed the PDF, but are there any resources that are going into this whole AEO?
Yeah.
Websites, blogs, or anything like that?
Oh no, Ahref is a good place, ahref.com. They are a good, I think they write one of the best contents, search engine land, writes one of the good contents around it. These are usually a couple of places, but then you have individual people who do this research, like that, and it's very evolving like very quickly. Like this is like the one that I talked about, the SSR piece, the server side rendering piece, is like a month-old, conversation in the SEO space, right? And there's still debates around it, right? And then LLM.txt is like 3-4 months old, but it's evolving very quickly. Like every week there's something, and there are debates happening and things like that, right? See, the good and bad thing is that the ChatGPT and Perplexity and all these people are not coming out and giving clear standards out, right? So what is happening is there is a lot of reverse engineering happening from the SEO industry, right? And they're trying to trying to run queries, right? This the report that I was sharing, that they ran like 10,000 queries, right? And then found the results from that research, right? So there's a lot of reverse engineering happening, and so that's where it becomes really exciting.